Island Ahoy, read and written by Timothy Bridgman. Chapter 1, The Journey. Hi, my name is John Jones, or JJ. I'm going to tell you a story from when I was younger. I was about 13 years old then, had blue eyes and tatty brown hair, and lived in the once poor family of Jones, which tells you I obviously did not wear designer jeans. Nope, nothing of the sort. I wore a miserable excuse for shorts and t-shirt. I liked to play with swords, but Mum did not approve. We owned a ship called the Hope. It was a small rowing boat that I used for fishing. It had a small motor and was like the brother I never had. One day I was fishing off the coast of America when a storm came out of nowhere and swept me out to sea. I was scared out of my wits. I tried the motor, but it was waterlogged. I decided I may as well rest and recover my energy. As I huddled down in the boat, I thought of Mom. Suddenly I was woken by cold water on my face. As I spat out salt water, I took in that my boat had been wrecked on a reef. As I climbed onto the reef, I wondered how I would explain the wrecked boat to Mom. I looked up and saw an island looming out of the mist. There was a little bay with cliffs surrounding it. Without warning, a wave washed over the reef and knocked me into the sea. As I spat out salt water, I turned around and saw that a shark had appeared from nowhere and was blocking my path back to the reef. Fear gave me energy as I powered through the water. I headed towards the island, away from the shark. My breath came in short, ragged gasps. When I could touch the bottom, I crawled ashore and fell into a deep sleep. Chapter 2, Quest. When I woke up, it was late in the day. I stood up and took stock of my surroundings. I was on a beach, with the forest only 20 metres away. I decided to explore the beach, which stretched around a big harbour. I saw a village after walking for what seemed like ages. I wondered if they had a boat to lend me. When I got there, it was getting dark, so I headed straight towards the big buildings. All was very quiet. I knocked on a door. It was opened by a woman who confirmed it was the chief's house. She ushered me in. I saw a man sitting by a fire who was probably the chief. He was a tall, brown-skinned, serious-looking man. He offered me a seat. I then told him my story and asked him if he would lend me a boat. The chief said he would have to think it over. The next morning I woke up feeling refreshed. I found Marianne, chief's wife, in the kitchen making breakfast. I was eating when the chief bustled in and sat down at the table. He said, "Let's cut to the chase. We cannot just give you a boat, but we could if you succeed in a quest to get a ruby." I inquired more about the ruby, and he told me it was as big as a fist and was stolen by a man many years ago. I asked why some of his men didn't go and get it back. He was silent for a few moments, then explained that many had tried, but none had come back. I didn't think I could succeed if a man could not, but still I needed to get home. After lots of deep thinking, I decided to accept the quest. As dawn broke the next morning, I was ready to go. The village blacksmith ran after me. He was panting like a warthog, but produced a sword from behind him and offered it to me. I thanked him, said goodbye, and started to walk down the trail, leaving the village behind me. Chapter 3, Help. I had been walking for hours when the trees grew closer together and hardly any light penetrated the dense canopy. Then a huge shadow passed on the tree trunks. I jumped, then realized it was a bat flying through a shaft of light which threw a shadow on the tree trunks. I shivered and walked on. After a while I saw a huge scorpion. "Help!" I cried in my head. I froze. The scorpion walked right up to me. I thought I was dead meat. Then it scuttled past as though it had never seen me. Holy smokes, that was close, I thought. I moved on again. After travelling for a week fighting through dense undergrowth, pulling myself out of quicksand that nearly pulled my arms off, and climbing over high mountain ranges, I sat down to have a huge catch-up on sleep time. I could not go to sleep, as something was telling me it's just around the bend. I did not know what it was, but I got up and walked around the bend, and then I saw the house. Chapter 4, The House. As I walked up to the house, I saw the chimney swaying in the breeze. As I pushed through bushes grabbing at my shirt, the door creaks open and shuts in the wind, and the paint is peeling off. The roof is sagging in, and it has a porch made of rotting wood with holes in it. Vines are climbing up the side of the windows. covered in dust and grime. The gate screeches as I open it. Then it falls off its hinges and makes a boom in the eerie silence. The path makes a crunching sound underfoot. As I push through prickly bushes, a spider jumps onto my shorts, and clings to them. I brush the brute off. I smell old and dusty things, and then the unexpected smell of bacon and eggs. I taste breast stale on my lips. A mix of emotion wash over me. I'm relieved to finally get here after the murderous journey, but my stomach is churning with fear about one question. Who is making the bacon and egg smell? I walk up to the porch and step carefully over the holes. I open the door and step in, and suddenly I am falling. Chapter 5. The Man. I woke up tied to a chair in a dark, damp and dusty room. I wondered how I got here, and then I remembered I had opened the door and stepped in. Then I was falling and landed in a pool of ice-cold water. I had climbed out shaking like a dog. The last thing I remembered was hearing someone say, "Tough fun, this. Most of them don't make it out of the water." Then a sharp pain at the back of my head and blackness. By then my eyes had grown accustomed to the dark. I had a look around and saw a big metal door at the far end of the room. There were no windows, so I thought I must be underground. Then I heard a big clanging, and the door opened, filling the room with blinding light. I was momentarily blinded. Then my eyes recovered, and I saw a man framed in the doorway. He shut the door and walked towards me, and I realized he was old. He had long brown unkempt hair, bushy black eyebrows, and a plump round nose. The stranger wore a stained white long-sleeved shirt, cut brown pants, and a long curved wicked dagger hung at his waist. He walked around me, studying me carefully. "Who are you?" I asked angrily, because he had tied me to a chair. "I am Max," he replied simply. He grabbed the chair from a dark corner of the room and sat in front of me, looking deep into my eyes. "Let me go," I said, holding in my temper. "No," he said simply. "I am so angry I lose my cool." "Let me go, you dithering old granny," I yelled. He had snorted, then said, "Do you think I'm going to let you go if I just tied you to a chair?" He had a point. He had pulled his chair closer and asked me, "What are you doing here?" I kept silent. We sat there for a long time. Finally he got up. I could have sat there for longer, but he obviously could not. He had let out an exasperated sigh, pushed his chair into the corner and said, "I hope you decide to talk tomorrow." With that he drew his dagger and tested the edge on his thumb. I have more persuasive ways. Then he left, slamming the door behind him. As his footsteps receded down the hall, I thought, "Oh no, what do I do now?" Chapter 6. The Escape. I tried to wriggle free of my bonds, but they were tight. I didn't give up easily, though. And 1 hour later, I felt a snap as the rope around my hands broke. "Yeah!" I almost yelled out loud. I untied my legs and jumped up and down to get blood circulating. When my blood is flowing freely, I jump up and tried the door handle. It was locked. I sat down and cried silently to myself, thinking of my poor mom. Then I heard her voice in my head saying, "Never give up." I will not give up. I jumped up and searched the room. I found a piece of metal. I had thought of the movies where James Bond picks locks. I put it in the lock and twisted it. I am rewarded with a click. I pushed open the door and stepped out into a long hallway, lit by lanterns hanging from the wall. I walked slowly down the hallway and up the stairs. I walked down another hall. I froze by one door. I had heard a noise. I peeked in and saw the man sprawled on the bed snoring. I had been holding my breath in fright. I let out that breath. I crept past and go into a room. I see the front door. I start to escape, but think about why I'm out here. I turn around and head back to the bedroom and the ruby. I dropped on my stomach and began to army crawl around the bed. I see the ruby on the bedside cabinet. I am stunned by the size of it. It was as big as my fist. I reached out and grabbed it. I tucked it in my pocket and crawled away. I'm about to leave the room when I spot his belt with knife in it, lying beside my sword. I quickly grabbed them and leave. I made sure I stepped over the hole at the front door. When I was outside, I started to run. I jumped over the remains of the gate. I was about to turn a corner when I heard a cry of pure hatred. When the old man discovered it, I took the ruby. Famous me. Chapter 7. The Blizzard. 2 days after I left the house, I came to the base of the mountain. I camped for the night and started to climb the next morning. As I was nearing the top, the wind came along and nearly plucked me off the mountain. I had looked up. I had seen dark, foreboding clouds building overhead. I had just reached the ridge line when the blizzard hit. Its strength was tremendous, and I could not see the end of my nose. I realized that I would get frostbite if I did not find shelter quickly. I grabbed my sword and used it as a spade. I worked like a madman. I was surprised at my strength, how the journey had built up my muscles. Before too long, I had dug a snow cave and was sheltering inside. After about an hour, the blizzard died down and I was safe enough to continue on my journey. Before I left, I checked the pouch on my belt for the ruby. It was missing. I jumped out of the snow and started scrabbling around in the snow. I searched for ages. Finally, I felt something hard in the snow. I pulled it out and stared in disbelief at the rock in my hand. I checked out at the snow. It seemed like it was laughing at me. I go into the snow cave to collect my stuff, and there was the ruby sitting right beside my sword. I sighed with relief as I let out all the worry from inside me. I quickly picked it up and put it in the pouch at my belt. I grabbed my gear and started to descend the mountain. Chapter 8. Home again. I had walked for almost 1 week before I saw smoke rising between the trees. Excited, I quickened my pace. When I could hear noises from the village, I broke into a run. Then a man jumped in front of me, stopping me dead in my track. My jaw dropped when I recognized the old man. I realized I must have heard something the night before. I heard a twig breaking, but thought it was an animal. He was holding a sword in a two-handed grip. I drew my sword. "Sss" was the sound it made. I went into a half-crouch, my sword tilt wavering in the air. I was ready for an attack. Then it came. He lunged at me, as fast as a snake. Our swords met with a ringing clash. He was as strong as a tiger. I felt a worm of doubt wriggling in my stomach. We had duelled for 5 minutes when my arms began to ache with the weight of my sword. Then he disarmed me. I passed out. I woke up expecting to be dead. I pinched myself to check I was alive. Then I saw someone looming over me. They said, "Do you have the ruby?" Before I could answer, a woman pushed him aside and knelt down beside me. Then she said, "Are you feeling all right?" in a kind voice. I replied yes. I recognized her as the chief wife. When I was well enough to sit up, I heard the story of how I got here. It seemed some children were playing in the forest and heard the swords. The men arrived in the nick of time and saved my life. The man got away though. I then got up and walked out of the tent to see all the villagers waiting outside. I gathered myself up and yelled for all to hear, "I have the ruby!" and held it up in the air. There was stunned silence, and then the cheering began. Woo! The chief came up to me and said, "We will be forever thankful to you." I nodded and handed him the ruby. He surprised me by saying, "We have a present for you all," and from behind his back he pulled a sword and a glittering sheath. I stared in wonder. I pulled the sword out and admired the razor-sharp edge. I had a few swings. It felt like an extension of my arm. I was speechless. I stayed at the village for 2 more days. When it was time to leave, I felt sad. I had made friends there, but I had to go. They gave me a boat and said goodbye. I left early in the morning, but everyone still came to farewell me. As I sailed away, a face peered out through the trees. "I will get you some day," the old man muttered. When I got home, Mum was overjoyed. She thought I was dead. I was never content because I always wondered if the old man would come back. The end.